Madam Chair, members of the board, we are now live.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Historic Districts Review Board. We are now called to order. Roll call, please. Who is taking roll call?
It's Melissa, Chair. I'm on Zoom tonight. Yes,
Oh, Melissa's on Zoom.
Chair Rios.
Here.
Yes. Chair Rios. Vice Chair Guida.
Here.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Here.
Member Beachside.
Here.
Member Bienvenue.
Here.
Member Bienvenue.
Here.
Thank you. Member Mather.
Here.
Member Valdo.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any changes to the agenda? Staff?
Yes, Chair Rios. Most of them are accurate on the agenda. I would just like to point out for items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, these are all the buildings on the state capitol campus. Those are being postponed to January 9th, 2024. It's been previously announced, but I just wanted to make sure that the public knew about it if they were not aware. And then for item number 13, 2023-6492 HDRB, 650A Old Santa Fe Trail. There were some changes that needed to be made relative to setbacks. And so that is postponed now to February 13th, 2020.
Thank you, Heather. Anything else?
Yeah.
Thank you. We have minutes of November 28th, 2023. Changes to any of these? No changes?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, were you going to have a vote on the agenda?
Oh, yes. So sorry. I was gone for a month and how quickly I forget. Roll call vote, please.
Move. Oh, you need a motion, don't you?
And the motion.
Move to approve the agenda.
Let me leave the room.
Wait a second.
All those in favor?
Mhm.
Or roll call vote?
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Yes.
Member Beachside.
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
Member Guida.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Valdo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Let's try this on the minutes. They're November 28th, 2023. Changes? Anyone? It appears there are no changes. So is there a motion to approve?
Rita moves to approve the minutes.
Beachside seconds.
And roll call vote, please.
Member Beachside.
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
Member Guida.
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
Member Valdo.
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Same.
Abstained, great. Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. We have 11 findings of fact and conclusions of law. Changes to any of these? It appears not. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I believe we're going to move to approve these by date in groups. Thank you to city staff for providing these by date. I'll make a motion to approve findings of fact, conclusions of law from September 12th. That's number 1 on the list.
You mean
Beachside seconds.
We're doing them individually,
Not individually, by date,
by date?
because not all board members are present.
Okay, but you just said November the 12th, and the next ones are September the 20th.
So motion was to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law. There's one on 624 Garcia Street from September 12th, 2023 hearing. That's the motion.
Okay, and Beachside second. Roll call vote, please.
Member Bienvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Baldo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beechide.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Guida moves to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law from September 26, 2023. That is items 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, and 4 from this list.
Aguilar Madrano seconds.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Baldo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beechide,
Yes.
Member Bienvenu.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next for October 24th.
Guida moves to approve findings of fact and conclusions of law from the hearing on October 24th, 2023. This is items 5 through 11 on this list.
Aguilar Madrano seconds.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Baldo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beechide,
Abstain.
Member Bienvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. And we have one last one, which is October 24th, 3rd.
I think that's a typo. We approved 5 through,
Was that a typo? Is that a typo? Okay. Okay, that needs to be corrected. So all of these have been approved. Thank you. And we have matters from the public. Anyone here wanting to express something having to do with this board? Come forward, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Richard Martinez, an architect here in town. We were told that a residence on Garcia Street, for which we made a submittal, was to be on tonight's agenda. Now it is not, and will not be heard at the next meeting, which is January 9th, which is full, but it may be heard on January 23rd. That's a problem for us. We were also told that our project on Acequia Madre, for which we also made a submittal, was to be heard on the meeting of January 9th. Now we are told that it'll be heard on the meeting of January 23rd. We had a public discussion on the subject of delays last February. It's almost a year now. And I appreciate everyone's service, and I appreciate the staff. And but I reiterate, I again suggest that this board and the staff be expanded to deal with this backlog, which has been going on for at least a year. Secondly, at the last meeting, our case off of Acequia Madre, at that meeting, we were denied our requested outcome by a small number of voters on this board. There were only 3 voting members. Our request was denied by a vote of this board of 2-1. I believe that this board voted against the recommendations of the historian, John Murphy, without adequate discussion. I asked for reconsideration of that decision. I understand that what is required legally is for a member who voted in the majority to make a motion that that item be reconsidered. In other words, one of the 2 who voted in favor of contributing status for our project would have to make that motion and the motion would have to be approved by the members present. I respectfully request that be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Heather, did you want to make any comments in reference to Mr. Martinez's comments?
Chair Rios, I just wanted to point to the fact that you have on your desk the request from Richard Martinez. I've made Frank aware of it, and so he can advise you as to the legal aspects. Thank you.
Well, I do. I don't agree with Mr. Martinez's characterization. There was an illegal vote because only 3 people voted. I don't think that's a reason to reconsider. However, according to Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm taking a look at sections 37.10 and 3736, a motion to reconsider can be made only by a member who voted with the prevailing side. In other words, a reconsideration can be moved only by one who voted yes if the motion involved was adopted, or no if the motion was lost. I look back at the minutes of that board meeting, and I see that there were 3 members voting. Members Mather and Valdo voted in favor, and member Beachide voted against it. So if member Mather or Valdo want to make a motion to reconsider, they can do that at this time. The motion to reconsider would have to be voted on by the entire board. And then that would have to be, what I'm concerned about is that that's not on the agenda, and I don't think the public has notice of it. So I think it would have to be reset for an agenda at some time in the future, and there would have to be some kind of public notice before the vote is taken to reconsider that project.
Thank
Madam-
you,
Madam Chair.
Attorney Rubeli. Yes.
We don't have to postpone the vote. We have voted on reconsideration issues before without noticing them on the agenda. I would agree that the hearing of the reconsideration of the case would have to be noticed and put on the agenda, but tonight, if so inclined, this could be put to the board for a vote for reconsideration.
You can vote whether to open the question for reconsideration, but the actual vote on the reconsideration, or that is on the project, would have to be placed on the agenda.
The hearing for the case. Right. Okay, thank you.
So if either member Mather or Valdo do not make a motion, then the motion fails.
I'd make a motion to reconsider.
And I second the motion.
And the assembly can then vote on the motion to reconsider.
Roll call vote in reference to the motion to reconsider.
Madam Chair, who seconded that?
That was Member Valdo.
Thank you. Member Valdo? Hello, Member Valdo? Thank
Yes,
you.
he voted in. Yes.
Okay, Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beachide,
Yes.
Member Bienvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. And then in the future, we will have to reconsider this and vote on it, correct?
Correct, and Mr. Martinez, just contact us tomorrow and we can start on that.
Thank you. Next person, Stephanie Beninatto.
Yeah, I'm going to give each of you a handout so that you can read it along with me. So it was really fortunate that Mr. Martinez brought up this issue of the vote, And although I was in favor of the outcome, I knew that the vote was improper. And I tried to bring this up last week because it was brought up as an issue in a discussion, and I was kind of shut down on that. But it says quite clearly in the resolution about majority vote, and that's the first one. Majority of the members shall constitute a quorum. Each member excluding the chair shall have one vote. So the chair is clearly included as a member of the board and is counted to establish the quorum. Then it tells when the chair can and can't vote. When a quorum is present at any meeting, the vote, that is a singular vote of a majority of the members present, not voting members, the majority of the members present, shall decide any question. And my reading as a lawyer, without interspersing new words in there, is that when it's a singular vote and it says a majority of the members present shall decide the question, that means if there's 4 people present, 3 is the majority, and 3 has to vote for whatever the issue is. There has to be consensus. Sorry, that is actually what happens. If it had said votes, plural, of the majority of members present, I think you could argue that as long as 3 people voted, it wouldn't matter which way they voted, could be a 2-to-1, but that's not what it says. And I took this to the city attorney, who finally responded in writing and told me that my interpretation was totally acceptable with what was written there, but she could not believe that the city council would establish a super majority. Let me read you 112B. This is in the city code. Again, it's definition. Majority means 5 of the members of the governing body. That means the city has actually established for itself in some situations a mega super majority, because if only 5 members are present, they have a quorum, and 5 members have to vote in a majority. And then it goes on to say, extraordinary majorities may be specified in particular laws or ordinances constituting a greater or lesser number, and the extraordinary majority shall apply in such specific cases. So in other words, the idea that the city council wouldn't want to create a supermajority is totally belied by this section 112B. They say they can and will create supermajorities. They created a supermajority for themselves in certain situations. The city is a home rule city. They are not obliged to follow Robert's Rules of Order if they want to make it more restrictive for themselves to approve something. And having 3 people out of a board of 7 is not exactly overwhelming. They want 3 if there's 4 or 5 people sitting here. They want 4 if there's 6 or 7 sitting here. This is a policy decision so that people aren't crying and coming in and saying only 2 people voted for something, which is exactly what happened with this status vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else in this audience wishing to speak about any issues related to H board? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Heather?
Madam Chair, member of the board, no.
Oh, okay, or Amanda, thank you. Okay, we will move on to the next thing. Any staff communications?
Yes, Madam Chair, there are a couple of things. So pursuant to the request made by the board to understand what the administrative approvals are for the past couple of months, you'll see a packet on your table. It's for November and up to today, so almost all of December or half of December. And so we've had 49 administrative approvals during that time. And on the first page, the upper portion is Historic Districts Review Board, where you'll find the administrative amendments that were approved are starting at the bottom of that page, the first page. So feel free to let us know if you have any questions on that. And then I would like to give you some good news. So the Historic Santa Fe Foundation has been working with us on a certified local government grant request for $26,000. And the purpose of the grant request is to provide technical assistance so that we can keep longtime and disadvantaged residents in our historic districts. For those that don't have the financial resources for architectural drawings, possibly those that would qualify for assistance from Habitat for Humanity. So we made a certified local government grant proposal request, and we were given the grant. So this is from Jeff Pappas of the state. Congratulations on an excellent CLG proposal. HPD's review committee was very impressed. I'm sitting in for Carla, who, as you know, is on medical leave. Sorry, I didn't need to say that. But we'll hold off on the contract until February, but that means good things for long-term residents in our historic districts. Affordable housing is a big issue in our community. And one of the impetus behind this is that many locals cannot continue to live in their home. And we want to make sure that they can.
Thank you, Heather. I'm very glad to hear that grant was granted to the city, even though you might think, well, $26,000, that's not very much, but it's a start on something that I feel is very positive for this community.
Right, and that's what it is exactly, as a start. So we want to set up the program, and we're going to have a test case. We have already a good candidate, and the Historic Santa Fe Foundation has been out to that particular property on Old Santa Fe Trail. And so we hope to really create a good network so that we can keep residents in historic districts.
Thank you. Under old business, we have nothing. And under new business, we have, I think it's 6 cases this evening. I do need to tell you that if you disagree with the decision that, if you disagree with the decision that this board renders this evening, you do have the option to appeal to the city council. And you would do that, you have up to 15 days after the findings and conclusions have been adopted and approved. Also, if you are a person from the audience that is wanting to speak on a particular case, please limit your comments to 2 minutes. And Amanda, can you help me with that, or Heather, one of you?
Yes, Ben is helping us with that.
Thank you.
Just, Rios,
Yes,
there was one thing I forgot in staff communication.
yes, Heather.
My apologies. Frank reminded me. So the request of this, from this board was that we take a look at a concern raised regarding 604 Galisteo and a potential concern of building without a permit or building not according to any approval. And staff did research that, and the applicant is building according to an administrative approval that was granted. There was a previous H-Board approval for the Portal sort of connection there that it just had not been constructed in a long time. So the applicant, or I'm sorry, the property owner is doing everything within proper procedure and has a permit.
Thank you for that. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. The first case this evening is located at 1369 Cerro Gordo. Is the applicant here?
Yes, he is.
The applicant is here. And Lanny, that is your case. May we hear it, please?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be recusing myself from this case, but with your leave, I will stay present in the room.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Go ahead, Lanny.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. This is case 2023-7489 HDRB for 1369 Cerro Gordo Road to construct an addition. The property at 1369 Cerro Gordo Road is a single-family residence listed as non-contributing to the Downtown and East Side Historic District. The closest building on the lot to Cerro Gordo Road is approximately 300 feet down the gated and locked private drive. The smaller red circle here is the building that we will be discussing. I obviously cannot draw a straight line on the computer. The property has 4 buildings, a primary residence with a guest house on the west side of the property, a secondary residence with garage on the east side of the property, and a workshop with carport to the north of the secondary residence, located on the east side of the property. This case concerns the shop and carport structure. All structures on the property are listed as non-contributing and are referred to as non-contributing in all cases since 2016. However, no status review of the property is on record. The Historic Preservation Office has no historic inventory form for the property. The shop and carport structure are not mentioned in previous cases, though photos show them in their early 2023 layout. Given the amount of work done on the property since 2016, staff determined that the property continues to be a non-contributing property and is not in need of a status review. The shop with carport is the focus of the case. The shop is adobe and was most likely constructed as one of the original structures on the property in 1932. An addition to the shop was built on the north side at an unknown date, but appears to be historic. The applicant believes that the carport was added sometime in the late 1970s. It is constructed out of scrap materials, including boards, litias, concrete, and old clay tiles salvaged from other properties. Most recently, under case 2023-7140, the HDRB approved exterior alterations to the shop with carport structure, including installing a foundation and converting the carport to a garage. That construction is currently undergoing. Repairing and cleaning windows on the south and north elevations, installing a viga topped portal roof at the center door of the original portion of the structure, and installing double doors at the shop building on the north end of the structure. Once the permitted work began on the garage conversion, the applicant realized that he would be losing some much needed storage space. In order to address the issue, he has redesigned his previously approved proposal. The applicant now requests to alter the previous approval by constructing a 140 to a height of 12 feet, where the maximum allowable height is 14.7, on the west facade of the historic addition on the north side of the shop with carport structure. The addition will hold one window on the west side of the structure and holds doors opening on the south. The applicant proposes this layout as it is not possible to add to the north or east elevations because they are located inside the hill, and the south elevation would conflict with the access to the residence. West elevation drawings here show that the original carport, which has been approved to be converted to the garage on the right, and the portal covering over the center portion of the structure. These two elements are previously approved and will not be changing. On the left in the upper drawing is the original 2 windows, which were approved to be altered to a door in the previous approval. With the addition, there will be a window on this western facade, and the doors will open to the south of the addition. Staff recommends approval of the application as it complies with section 14-5.2 general design standards and for 5.2E downtown and east side design standards. Stand for any questions.
Lanny, thank you for that report. Board members, do you have any questions for Lanny at this time? It appears not. Will the applicant please come forward and get sworn in? Melissa, will you swear in the applicant, please?
Yes, of course. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good evening, sir.
Is your microphone on?
Yes,
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Patrick McDowell, 28 Arroyo Hondo Trail.
Thank you.
And so I am the property manager for Mr. Midyet. Jay Midyet is the applicant and owner builder of the project, just to clarify.
Okay, what do you have to tell us? Anything further than what staff just told us?
No, I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Board members, do you have questions or comments in reference to this project? No questions or comments? Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this particular project? Stephanie Beninato, if you will kindly get sworn in.
Stephanie Beninato.
Thank you. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So I think the.
Thank you.
Excuse me, thank you. I think the project should be approved. I just think that you should status the property as non-contributing then if that's what it is, rather than like putting it off or ignoring the fact that it doesn't have status. And in terms of the new proposal, I just wish the windows would replicate the original windows in the building. Otherwise, I think I'm very happy that the middle part with all the windows around the doors is being kept. And the garage doors, I think, make it more functional. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else in this audience wishing to comment on this particular case? No? And anyone on Zoom?
Madam Chair, member of the board, no.
Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion. Yes, Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion. Case 2023-007-489 HDRB 1369 Cerro Gordo Road. I move that the board approve the project as submitted in agreement with staff's recommendations.
Is there a second?
Aguilar Madrano will second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. Next case is located at 303 Paseo de Peralta. And is that applicant here? The applicant is here. And Paul, that is your case. Please let us hear your case.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you this evening. This is for case number 2023-007576 HDRB. 303 Paseo de Peralta is a commercial building listed as non-contributing to the downtown and Eastside Historic District. The 3,403 square foot main structure was built in 1986 on a 0.19 acre lot. The structure resides on the northern end of the intersection of Paseo de Peralta, Rosario Boulevard, Griffin Street, and east of Rio Grande Avenue. The structure is a two-story structure built in a modern, recent Santa Fe style and can be observed by the high rounded parapets and cementitious stucco. A previous administrative approval has been granted in 2022 for case number 2022-006069 administrative for the replacement of mold wood metal clad casement windows with simulated divided light windows. Now, the applicant is proposing following exterior alterations. The first thing they're looking at doing is removing the existing exterior stairs and modification of the exterior wall and parapet to create a small storage room inside the building. They're looking at doing this on the southern end and on the northwestern end of the building. The existing stairs are composed of a rusted steel structure with concrete pans that are dilapidated to the point of being a safety hazard and are currently unusable to the public. This area of the building is also creating an issue of moisture intrusion that multiple contractors have been unable to repair. The second thing they're looking at doing is to remove the angled yard wall parapet that forms the guardrail for the south side of the exterior stairs, as well as the exterior stairs themselves, and create a small utility closet in the area where the stairs were. By code, the second floor of this space only requires one exit. Presently, the second floor has two exits, as another exit exists on the north side of the building. The third thing they're looking at doing is the new storage space would include a parapet, and that would complete the rectangle, and that is currently void space with the stair and angle line of the parapet. They're also looking at several bollards that will be added to the property to protect the building, and an additional middle downspouts to the existing canals, and infilling some sections of grade with concrete paving to mitigate ongoing moisture issues on the property. Here is the existing and proposed floor plan. Let me start with the proposed site plan. Here on the site plan, on the southwest is kind of where is the staircase. On the southeast, I apologize. They have the staircase, and in the proposed, they're removing that staircase and then they're infilling it. It'll be enclosed and it'll be as if it's not there, and it's just going to be contiguous with the building itself. They're also doing this on the northwestern face of the entry of the building. With that, they're currently doing some remodel on the windows. They've installed new windows. They're looking at restuccoing the building in a cementitious stucco with a mix of La Luz, El Rey La Luz, and Cottonwood mixed together, which has been previously approved in an administrative approval by staff. Here on the existing and proposed section of the new storage space, they're looking at removing they're not looking at removing the pillar. They're actually gonna encase the pillar using the wall that wraps around that pillar as their exterior wall and enclosing that area. Here's a look from facing east. Now, here at the entryway below the stairwell, to the right of the entry doors is where they're looking at closing that area for storage space. And then around the pillar on the left side of the stairwell as it drops down, they're going to use that yard wall and enclose around that pillar and then close it off to the entry doors for storage space as well, with an interior door access door. Here are the stairwells that they're looking at removing. At the site visit today, we did stop by. We did notice that the stairwells are removed. They did receive an administrative approval to remove and replace the stairwell in kind, but now with the proposal is to remove the stairs completely and infill for a storage space. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Staff stands for questions.
Anyone on this board have questions for Paul? Pilar Medrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said about the stucco? I know you said it was a mix of La Luz and Cottonwood. Is that what the current stucco is? Or would that be a new color they're proposing?
Madam Chair, Member Aguilar Medrano, that will be it'd be different than what is already currently on there. It's a mixture of them both combined.
Okay, and they're proposing to do the whole structure to restucco it?
Yes, ma'am.
I only ask because Cottonwood is on our list of colors that aren't appropriate for the district that it's in. Have you seen a sample of what that mix might look like?
Madam Chair, Member Aguilar Medrano, no, ma'am, I have not. And I've requested it from the applicant, and they're going to get me a sample as soon as they get one.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions, board members, or comments? None. I would think that La Luz and Cottonwood would probably give it more of a tan color. Now it's lighter. That's just my observation. Okay, thank you, Paul. Applicant, if you'll come forward. And you will get sworn in.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank
name
you.
is,
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sheb Mirando. I work for Lloyd and Associates Architects. I live at 1301 Declavina Street.
And good evening, sir. Paul just gave us a thorough report. Do you have anything further to add or clarify?
Just a few things, yes. One being on the color. The hierarchy of administrative approvals, we had a couple consecutively before this case. So one was to restucco the whole building in that mix. We submitted pictures, not a color sample, because it is a custom color when that administrative approval was approved. It was some confusion on our part when we resubmitted. We didn't see it as changing color from that, so we didn't resubmit. We can certainly, though, produce pictures or a custom color array. I actually wasn't aware of Cottonwood being on an exclusion for that district, so that's very interesting to know. I will say just generally, it would be a darker color, certainly. Of that mixture, La Luz is far more assertive than the Cottonwood color. Cottonwood really just lightens La Luz slightly from its brown base, but it still remains more of a La Luz in character. So that would be my description of the color. Apologies that you don't have it in front of you. In terms of the stair, I recognize after the fact that it says we're asking for permission to remove stairs, and they're not there. And I just do want to make clear the hierarchy here was that we received a permit with administrative approval that involved replacing it, and it was halfway through this construction that the owner, who's in attendance as well, realized that he would actually want to modify his application in a way that sent it to the board. And just as a stylistic description of why we're proposing this, part of it is truly that it's a medical office that severely needs storage for his use. So he's proposing to build, truthfully, very expensive storage space. And the reason he's doing it is he truly does need it. But the nice thing for us in this application is, to us, this is a building that is not particularly in keeping with the district. I would describe it as fairly muddled in its style. And we believe that enclosing both sides of this portal brings it more into the recommendations of the district. Particularly the exposed column, that sort of talks about, I mean, we'd see it really as a modernist, almost a deconstructivist move there with this column with a really fine point of bearing on top of it. And similarly, the angle seen on the stair. And so we'd be replacing both of those elements with elements that we find to be much more reflecting the district.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, board members? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, but just a comment that I completely agree with your last observation. I think this building has always been stood out as being completely inappropriate for its surroundings, and it is on a relatively prominent location. So I think that your improvements are just that, improvements. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Benvenu. Any other questions or comments? Nothing, anyone in this audience wishing to comment on this particular case? I don't see anyone coming forward. Anyone on Zoom?
Madam Chair, members of the board, no one on Zoom.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion, please. Member Benvenu?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go ahead. Case 2023-007576, HDRB 303, Paseo de Peralta. I move that the application be approved as submitted and as consistent with staff's recommendations.
I have a second?
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Madam Chair?
Yes, member, Aguilar Medrano, did you wish to add something?
Yeah, could I propose well, I don't know if it would be a friendly amendment if I'm not the one seconding it. But maybe I can recommend to Jennifer, if the applicant can submit a photo to staff that was previously submitted to ensure the color is closer to La Luz than Cottonwood.
I think I understood the applicant to say that that had received administrative approval previously, the color.
I think that was,
Is that correct? I don't think we need that in this motion. It's already been approved.
I think that was indicated, correct, Paul?
Madam Chair, Member Bishai, that is correct, but I have requested it to add to this packet so I can get another look at it. I want to see what that color looks like. So I have requested it, and the applicant is going to get us a copy. And as soon as he does, I'll add that to the application.
Yeah, I guess, I did understand that there was a previous approval for it, but I assumed it was different staff than Paul. So I think I would still include it in the motion as Paul, because I think since it's being brought back to us, I think it's in the scope of this project to review the stucco again and just make sure that staff still agrees with that since the case has changed hands.
I'm okay with that if that's how staff interprets their administrative approvals, that they can be reconsidered with this case.
Thank you. I don't think it'll hurt anything. The applicant is already working with you, Paul. So
Thank you.
anything further?
I just think as point of order that the maker of the motion needs to adopt the proposed amendment.
Oh, yes, maker of the motion.
So I would go ahead and agree to that friendly amendment. Also, as a point of order, council, is it true that only the seconder of the motion is entitled to propose a friendly amendment, or can any board member propose such an amendment, which I understood to be the case?
Standing was that any board member can add a friendly amendment, but any board members that have voted prior to the friendly amendment have to recast their votes.
Sure.
I could look that up.
And of course, no vote's been taken yet. We're still in discussion at this point. So, okay, that's the way I understand the rules as well.
Thank you, member.
For what it's worth.
Member
So I
Muir.
do agree to the friendly amendment as proposed.
Thank you.
And I second the revised motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Beachide,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, applicant. Next case is located at 812 Gildersleeve, and is that applicant here? The applicant is here. And Ramon, that is your case, so may we hear the report, please?
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is case number 2023-07578, HDRB. 802 Gildersleeve is seeking approval for a remodel and addition. The residence is located on the west side of Gildersleeve Street between East Burger Street and to the northeast Houghton Street to the south. Property is outlined in red here. The aerial photo. In case 2023-6854-HDRB, heard before the Historic Review Board on June 13th, 2023, the board confirmed the status as contributing and designated the primary elevations as east facing facade number 1 and a portion of the south facade F2, excluding the wrought iron security gates on these primary elevations. And also designated the east street facing yard wall as contributing. The east elevation. This is the portion of the existing south elevation that was deemed as primary. South elevation, camera facing northeast. The west elevation, camera facing southeast. This is an oblique of the north elevation of the camera facing southwest. And the north elevation facing south. On the left is the existing site plan, and the proposed site plan is on the right. There'll be work done in the existing basement on the left and the proposed basement plan on the right. This is the existing and proposed ground floor plans. The existing's on the left, the proposed on the right. The applicant is looking to enlarge the kitchen area that's outlined in red here and add a terrace and adding a balcony to the west. The existing east elevation above, the proposed east elevation below. Little changes here. The windows will be refurbished and the wrought iron security gates removed. Existing and proposed north elevations. Windows refurbished and wrought iron security grills removed. And there's a relocation of one of the double hung window that's kind of in the center right. The existing and proposed west elevation includes removing the garage doors and replacing them with French doors, a new balcony, new doors and windows. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D general design standards and 14-5.2H Don Gaspar historic design standards. Staff does not find that an exception is necessary for these renovations since no historic materials will be removed from the primary facades. The work on the primary facades are repairs, not replacements. And the only addition to the footprint of the house will be on nine non-primary facades and more than 10 feet from a primary facade. With that, I can take any questions.
Thank you, Ramon. Any questions for Ramon, board members? Not at this time. Applicant, please come forward and get sworn in. He's ready, Melissa.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury? Okay. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Greg Reed, 535 Cerritos Road.
Good evening, Mr. Reed. What do you have to add?
I don't have anything to add, other than I appreciate you reviewing our project tonight and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant, board members? I just want to say we were obviously on the field trip today, and I believe Ramon indicated that this property had been vacated for quite a long time. I think he indicated 10 years.
I heard anywhere between 20 and 30.
Yeah, so
Yeah. I think it was being used by the previous owner as a storage for their shop. That's why there's grills everywhere. But no one's lived in it for decades.
so this is very nice to hear that this renovation is being done and in a very sensitive manner.
Yeah, we're very lucky with the person who, the current owner. He's really has sensitivity towards that.
Anyone in this audience wishing to comment on this particular project? No one? Anyone on Zoom? Madam Chair, members of the board, no one on Zoom. Thank you. Yes, member Aguilar Madrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for the applicant. Where the balcony is, I think that's off the master suite on the second bedroom. Can you describe to us just a little bit about the trim details around those French door? Because it looks like those are unique and that it's not repeated on any of other of the doors.
So the trim around the bedroom door on the second floor is supposed to mimic the pediment that's around window in the front facade, which again is a one-off. None of the other windows have that type of territorial detail. So we thought if we added it again, it might make more sense.
And that would be in the dark brown stain that everything else is. Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Guida.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. First of all, Mr. Reed, beautiful design and exceptionally nice drawings. This is a pleasure to review and to see such a kind of sensitively handled project. Kudos to you and your client. Case 2023-007-578 HDRB 812 Gildersleeve. I move that the board approve the project as submitted.
Do I hear a second?
Aguilar Madrano will second.
Any further discussion or additions? Nothing? Roll call vote, please.
Member Bienvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano,
Yes.
Member Beachide.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. Good luck on your project. Next case is located at 367 Hillside Avenue. Is that applicant here? Let's see, Chris Purvis is back there. Okay. Paul, this is your case. May we hear it, please?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is case 2023-007604 HDRB 367 Hillside Avenue. 367 Hillside Avenue is a single-family residence listed as contributing to the downtown and east side historic district with the south and west facades designated as primary. The 1,432 square foot structure was built in and around 1860 on a 0.35 acre lot. The original structure was a two-bedroom, quintessential Spanish Pueblo vernacular architectural design, which was comprised of adobe construction material, viga beams, recessed windows, and a flat roof. The property has had some additions, including a standalone garage built in 1978. In 2018, 367 Hillside Avenue went before the HDRB for status and was given status as contributing to the downtown and east side historic district with primary facade designation. In 2019, an administrative approval was given for a coyote fence and to cover enclosure of the trash cans. Now, the applicant proposes the following exterior alterations. The first thing they're looking at doing is replacing the non-compliant aluminum sash with barn sash style casement windows to be aluminum clad dark brown as indicated on the plans, painted in wood, and rebuild the doors that will require it in a matching style. The applicant also requests minor changes to the structure related to the stabilization to the rear in the north wall, keeping the footprint and opening location by rebuilding the caved-in and adobe wall with CMU. They're looking at re-roofing the structure with modified bitumen roofing, adding approximately 6 inches of insulation to the roof to improve livability and to cure the roof drainage issues. This will mean that we need to add approximately 6 inches to the existing parapet. The maximum height will be no greater than 12 feet. They're looking at restuccoing the structure, matching the current color El Rey cementitious adobe, adding 2 inches of rigid board insulation under the new stucco. They're also looking at removing the aluminum sunshade on the west elevation. The current home is 1,700 square feet divided into 3 units. The applicant proposes lowering the floor on the rear unit 12 inches to make it habitable, and incorporating the shop studio on the southeast side into another apartment. All new windows should be brown clad insulated TDL casements. New or rebuilt exterior doors shall be simple 4-panel and or TDL glass painted azure type. So at the site visit today, reviewing the house, the home is in some TLC. They need some care. The roof, looking at it, it's ponding. And as we can look from the north side, what they're proposing is raising the parapet and redoing the entire roof, as well as the structure on this photograph by the coyote fencing. There is some cave-in adobe, and that's the location in which they're looking at putting in CMU. Also, here on the north side, they're looking at putting 2 HVAC units directly near center line of the structure. Here is the south elevation. They're looking at the new windows along the southern facade and new doors as well, with new adobe cementitious stucco. Historic photos from the previous HCPI forms done. And here is the existing and proposed site plan. Again, they're looking at on the north side of the structure, 2 new HVAC systems and a complete new roof. Here's a south proposed elevation. They're putting in divided light casement windows, refurbishing the doors, and removing any kind, repairing the structure in general. Here on the north proposed facade, they're looking at doing the same with the windows. They're remodeling and repairing and putting in divided light windows and removing the steel casement windows. And here's the El Rey adobe cementitious stucco. Staff stands for questions. Oh, pardon me. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2D, general design standards for all historic districts, and 14-5.2E, downtown and east side design standards. Staff stands for questions.
Well, this particular building has a distinct stucco pattern. Was that discussed as to whether the applicant is keeping it or wanting to change it?
Madam Chair, members of the board, that is something I will need to discuss with the applicant, but we need to recommend that the stucco keeps in kind to the way that it was placed previously. Kind of a rough trowel stucco. It's unique to that location and that structure, and it looks really distinctive on that structure.
Thank you. Aguilar Medrano, member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is in line with yours. I'm hoping either a staff member or someone on the board can maybe refresh my memory, but I recall that Carly, when she was manager, we had conversations with her about using rigid insulation under stucco on contributing structures, and that she thought it was something that shouldn't be done on contributing structures because it gave a very even level finish that natural stucco typically wouldn't have. I don't know if any staff or board members recall this conversation or can speak to it, but I'm just curious about the rigid insulation under the stucco.
Member Aguilar Medrano, my apologies. So with reference to rigid insulation, I'm not aware of that. Is mostly what we practice is the use of, if it's cementitious, then the use of cementitious, especially on historic.
Okay.
And then there's a very unique trowel pattern. It's a rough texture stucco on that building. And we would also be looking to have them maintain that finish. It's not uniform.
Okay. Thank you, Heather.
Any other questions? Yes, Member Beachside.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification for staff or the applicant. There's a mention of the windows being replaced with a brown aluminum clad. I just was wondering, is that, and there's a blue in the packet too. Does the blue remain where it is now and the aluminum clad replaces sort of the white windows? Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Member Beachside, that is correct. The windows will be painted, I believe, in the brown color, but I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Sure, thank you.
Anything else, board members? Nothing? Chris, can you come forward and get sworn in, please? Melissa, can you swear in, Chris?
Yes. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Christopher Purvis, 518 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Thank you.
Chris, what do you have to tell us about this historic building?
It's a great old building. Needs a little work.
It looked like it needs a lot of help.
And to answer your question about the stucco, we didn't address it, but we should have addressed it in the letter. We were planning on keeping that pattern. The idea is basically to just try and make it waterproof and get rid of the aluminum windows. And there was a reference to a steel window, but I don't think there's any steel windows. They were all aluminum, the ones we're planning.
So no steel casement windows on this building.
Right, they're aluminum.
Mhm.
Ray knows when they were replaced, but it was a while ago. And the blue is because in the pictures you can see there is some blue, and so the idea is we need to keep that pattern. And finally, in reference to rigid board, if you nail the rigid board on well to the lower cement, it takes on that character. And we can't use spray on because that seals the adobe. So it's trying to add insulation without making a waterproofing problem for the old adobes. I think those are the questions.
Chris, nothing was said about the coyote fencing that is low. Is that going to be kept?
Madam Chair, you're referring to the low coyote fence in the front?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think they're going to keep it.
That's going to keep it at,
The coyote in the back is just trying to hide the
right.
falling down wall.
Any questions for the applicant? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is another nice sensitive remodel. We're seeing a lot of them tonight. I love the way you're really keeping the character of the house, which is, very simple, vernacular, humble, as we always describe these types of properties. And I think that still remains. I would agree that the insulation is a bit of a concern. So the more you can do with that to try to retain the current look of it, in addition to the stucco patterning, would be appreciated. The question I have is, there's something of a cacophony of utility pipes and so forth all over the front elevation. It looks like in your drawing that at least the metering remains, but what about all the other piping that's all across that south elevation? I assume that you're going to be able to hide that, but what's your thought?
Yeah, I will if I can. It's that, P&M will make us keep the meter on the front.
Right.
I think some of that's extraneous, but we haven't really dug into the building to find out what is. Yeah, we'll make a solid effort to hide everything that's not the meter. I think there's a gas line down there too.
Okay.
But we're
So, yeah.
not using as much gas because they're switching to the splits as a way of meeting the heating. But you raised another point which I forgot. When we originally proposed this, we were going to leave the apartment in the back. But as zoning pointed out, that needs to be part of the house. And so originally it was part of the house. So we're just going to reopen it to the house. It's in the plans that you have, but my description was wrong. So you have to step up into it. Right now, the ceiling's about 5.5 or 6 feet.
Oh, thank you.
So any other questions, board members, at this time? No, anyone in this audience wishing to comment? And here comes Mr. Ray Herrera, who I know is a neighbor.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Raymond M. Herrera, 379 Hillside Avenue.
Thank you.
I want to thank
Chris Purvis.
Chris for getting in touch with me and helping him out with some other problems with the house. This used to be my in-laws' house. And on the far east corner of that building was a little grocery store that was used for probably 60, 70 years. And the changes that he's proposing, I like and I approve. And the plaster job on that, I think I plastered that house when I was a young kid. I think right after I got married, which I'm celebrating this year, 55 years, so probably 40 years ago, I wired the house and plastered and stuck with it. And that's my design or my pattern, which can be duplicated, but I'd be willing to show you how. Anyway, that's one of the concerns I had with the stucco pattern, because I hate on the old Adobe, the even the sand finish, I don't like too much because it shows all the imperfections and everything, but in a different way from this finish. This finish doesn't really show the evenness of the building as with the sand finish. And the color, I think is the right color for that house, being that it's next door to me, and I'm a pain in the you-know-what to most people, so anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Anyone else wishing to comment on this particular project? Anyone on Zoom?
I have Stephanie Benenato.
Okay, she has been sworn. So Stephanie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Stephanie Benenato. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. So it says something about I'm going to be done in 5 seconds. I haven't even had any time, so I hope you're not going to cancel me out. Anyway, I think that the design is fine. I want to say that I'm a little concerned about HVACs generally. I can't tell if this is going to be on the ground and screened or on the roof and screened, but I really do think that HVACs need to be screened, including these mini splits. And I think that they should be considered of the neighbors by screening them, at least to some extent, because they are noisy. In terms of using rigid insulation on an old Adobe, I live in a 1930s double wide or 18-inch wide wall Adobe that had no insulation and had a dirt roof when I first bought it. I have put rigid insulation on the walls, and it doesn't look flat. It still looks like an Adobe building. And I think it's worked really well. It certainly helped with my heating costs. And I think that it'll work fine. And I think that they'll be able to recreate the pattern that Mr. Herrera put on that building so many years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else on Zoom?
Madam Chair, members of the board, no one else.
Okay. Chris, did you have anything further to say?
Clarify those compressors are on the ground behind the building, and then there's a retaining wall behind it. So they're visible and/or neighbors will be able.
Chris, I just want to say, I think you're doing a great job on this building. I have passed this building. My sister lives on Hillside. And I go by Hillside many, many times. And I've always wondered about this building. And as John said, it's a humble building. It's a vernacular style building. And I think you're going about it in the proper way to remodel it. Thank you.
You.
And yes, Heather.
Thank you, Chair Rios. I just would like to point out that the rough texture of the stucco wasn't mentioned in the letter. So I'd like to request the board make a condition of approval, just so that it's clear that once it comes in, that's required.
Thank you. Member Aguilar Madrona?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to propose to make a motion.
Please do.
In case number 2023-007-604 HDRB at 367 Hillside Avenue, I move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that the existing stucco texture and pattern is matched in the new stucco job.
Guido will second.
Thank you. Roll call vote?
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris.
you.
Next case is located at 1120 East Alameda Street, and I see that the applicant and your applicants are here. Paul, may we hear this case, please?
Evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is case 2023-007490 HDRB 1120 East Alameda Street, Downtown and Eastside Historic District. This is a contributing structure to the Downtown Historic District. The applicant requests approval for a 118 square foot addition to a primary facade, a 431 square foot portal on the south elevation, and relocate an existing gate and coyote fence on the east elevation, and stucco the new addition with cementitious stucco and desert rose, matching the existing and new windows, doors, and paint, which will be turquoise to match the existing wood trim. An exception is requested to section 14-5.2D2D to construct an addition within 10 feet of a primary facade. 1120 East Alameda Street is a single-family residence listed as contributing to the Downtown and Eastside Historic District, with the north and east facades designated as primary. The main structure was built around 1930 on a 0.2 acre lot. The structure initially encompassed approximately 1,470 square feet, which includes a bedroom, a bathroom, and other open spaces. The house is characteristically designed in the quintessential Santa Fe vernacular style, constructed with adobe brick, and is rectangular in shape with a corrugated steel roof. The house also has a cellar, which is accessed from the interior, and the house and cellar are finished in cementitious stucco and display mixtures of fenestration. The structure was initially used in the early to mid 1930s as identified on aerial maps as an agricultural field house. It has been noted by previous homeowners that there were no utilities installed in the structure until the 1950s. The house was owned by several renowned artists in the Southwest, and the house has underwent several remodels throughout the time, with the installation of utilities, maintenance repair, roof repair. Currently, a high wall separates the residence from the park on the north, east, and west elevations, and a coyote fence on the south elevation. Material of the wall is unknown, however, is covered by cementitious stucco. There has been a previous HDRB case on this structure, which they were given status as contributing to the downtown and east side in April of 2023, designated as the north and east as primary facades. Now, the applicant proposes the following exterior alterations. They're adding a 118 square foot bedroom addition to the south elevation. Adding an addition will be 10 feet by 6 inches in height and will match the pitch of the roof at that location of the existing roof. They're adding a 431 square foot portal on the south elevation. The portal will be 10 feet, 6 inches in height and will match the pitch of the roof at that location of the existing roof. They, post and exposed beams of the portal will have a linseed oil finish. They look to relocate an existing gate and coyote fence on the eastern edge of the property. Let's see. Thus, they look to restucco the new addition with El Rey stucco colored desert rose to match the existing color of the house. They look at adding 2 new wood interior, wood exterior 3 foot by 4 foot divided light windows on the south elevation of addition. They look at adding a new wood interior, wood exterior 5 foot by 4 foot divided light window on the east elevation of the addition. They also are proposing on adding a new 6 foot by 8 inches by 2 foot by 10 inch wood door on the south elevation of the new addition. And extending on the wood trim color on new addition to be turquoise to match existing wood trim on existing residence. So here on the north elevation, there's no proposed work that will be impacting. Here is the location of the east elevation where the addition will take place. They look at extending where the divided light windows are out to the south and enclosing that structure 118 square feet. Staff has reviewed this. It's extending on that eastern facade, and staff believes that it does not impact the contributing status of the structure, nor does it impact the 50% of the square foot addition to the historic square feet. And it will not impact the facade that as it is. It is extending the facade to the south, but it's not impacting it adversely. Here on the south facade, at the edge of the south facade that's covered by the tree, here at that edge, they're extending where they're creating that portal. They're extending it further to the south to the wall and creating a portal in the backyard. Here's a coyote fence, the coyote fence and gate, which they are looking at moving to the north, relocating to the north. Historic photographs of the structure. And here's the proposed floor plan. Here, covered in the red blocks on the very top, is the extension of the portal from where the end of the structure is. They're looking at creating that addition. It's approximately 431 square feet. And then on the eastern facade, they're looking on 118 square foot addition. The west and east facade, on the west elevation, they're extending to the south, and here you can see where they're creating that extension of the portal. And then on the east elevation, you can see the new divided light windows and them extending the portal and that new addition. Here on the south elevation on the bottom. So no proposed work on the north elevation. On the south elevation, they're looking at, you can see a good view of the portal and then the enclosure of the new addition. Staff recommends approval of the proposed project and finds that the application complies with section 14-5.2B general design standards for all historic districts and 14-5.2E downtown and east side design standards. Staff stands for questions. Thank you.
Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, which facades are primary? Can you show us?
The primary facades are the east and the north.
So the impact is to the north facade. It's the portion of the portal that extends that facade.
The portal would be extending on the south facade. And so the impact of, so no work will be done on the north. And that's one of the primary facades. The eastern facade, that's where the work will take place, where they're extending that addition and that enclosure to extend a bedroom. And then the portal will extend off of that as well.
Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying. And this is downtown and east side historic district. You reviewed the room addition for compliance with things like windows 3 feet from the corner, diagonal distance of glazing, all that stuff, and found that it complied.
Madam Chair, Member Guida, I reviewed the application and I believe it meets the code.
Okay,
Is that it, Member Guida?
that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Eric Enfield, would you please come forward?
Hi there. How are you guys?
Hi,
today?
do you swear, hi,
Oh,
do you
I
swear
gotta
under the
swear.
penalty of, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Eric Infield, 612 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Okay, he's got it,
Okay.
and you've got the floor.
Just a couple clarifications. The addition isn't on a primary facade. It's offset about 6 inches, and it actually required an exception from you to do that. And that exception is included in here. And I could read the exception questions, but you probably already have, and the staff agrees with them, so I won't bother. But there's a very important person in this building right now, and that is the occupant of this new bedroom. And Gus is here, and he's never had his own bedroom. So he gets his own bedroom with this 118 square foot addition. I know you'd said you'd work with me on the offset of this space, and you can see I even left the old window in and I offset it off the post on the other facade. So it actually doesn't attach to the primary facade. It attached to the non-primary facade. And I couldn't give you 10 feet off of it, but I gave you 6 inches, and I'm hoping you'll accept that. And that's the exception that we're asking for.
Thank you, Eric. Questions or comments? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I was very happy to see this application come through. I remember our last discussion very well, and I think you were quite troubled when this was designated a contributing structure and the primary facades were designated, with the concern being expressed that, well, this is going to prevent this from being a livable house for the people that need to continue to occupy it because we won't be able to expand it. And our response at the time was, well, that's what exception criteria are for. And so come back.
Here
to
I
us with
am,
that request.
10 months later.
Yep. Well,
To
sorry it took 10 months.
118 square foot addition, but I will say that the thing I disagreed with was I felt like in our discussions during that meeting on the primary that it was going to stop at the fence.
Right.
Because it wasn't visible. When I received the H-board letter, they included the whole east facade, and I got a little upset. But my misunderstanding, I went back through the meeting notes. I didn't see that in the meeting notes. I just thought that's where we were going, but I'm glad we could come up with something that I hope the board can vote positively on.
Yeah, I think that this is exactly the kind of thing we like to see, or that I speak for myself, I'd like to see.
Yeah.
In a case like this where made our designations without, not without concern for, but with, as a first step, without taking into account yet exactly what the next proposal might be. And
Understood.
I continue to believe that's the right way to approach these, because if there is a conflict with what is desired and our ordinance and the way it protects our primary facades, that's what the exceptions are for. And if those can be met, and I grant I consider them a high hurdle. But in this particular case, this to me is a perfect example of the type of project that meets all the exception criteria for the reasons you set forth in your response and the reasons staff set forth in their report. So I think this is exactly the
you.
way the ordinance is supposed to work. You've respected what we were protecting, which is this historical remnant that speaks so eloquently of the agricultural past of that neighborhood, and allowed it to be something that can continue to be lived in by families. That's the best of all worlds.
And I'm happy for them because this is their house. Their family's owned it for a long time. And I've worked with Sam since, I think it's 84 on the Inn of the Governors. I know, but I've worked about 40 years. Sam's the general manager, so I've helped him out at the Inn of the Governors too. So it was it's the most important project for me tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bermudez. Along these same lines, I'd like to say that this type of project works. This is a contributing building, but you have done something that is very appropriate and sensitive. And I also want to say that we want families to continue to live in the district. So you want them to be able to add and have this young man have his own bedroom, right? So I think this was done in a very good manner. And I think that was expressed, as Member Bermudez said, during the status review hearing.
Yes.
That it didn't mean that you could not add something, but you have to do it in a particular sensitive, appropriate manner. And I think that was done, in my opinion, that has been done, has been accomplished. Any other comments or questions? Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the statements about, that we do have an exception process. That's a way to resolve conflicts with primary facades. I certainly supportive of families continuing to live in the district. I don't know if I'm looking at the same project. I don't know that this is necessarily a super sensitive addition to the building. I'll say first that, I don't know that I would agree that the building is worthy of contributing status to begin with. I'm concerned about a couple things. One, not the rule of adding on to a primary facade, but the way in which this is done. This is kind of, just kind of slapped onto that very odd detail, which was probably an ad hoc detail of that sunroom on the back. And so we're leaving that remnant of that, I guess, for the sake of
Not having to get another exception to remove historic material.
Well, the mechanics of the case is part of this, but what I'm talking about is, like, is this a good design response? And Eric, what I'm curious about is, like, you've shown us 2 casement windows with no divided lights, a slab door. Is that what we're going to see in the finished product, or are we to expect something different?
That's what you expect to see in the finished product.
Okay. I mean, my view, that the addition does not conform with district standards. We talked to Paul about the distance from the corner. We do have a rule of, is this not publicly visible at all?
No.
And so that would be the justification for no divided light windows?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Eric, you're not on staff unless you want to join.
Madam
I'm asking
Chair,
staff.
Member Guida, for the primary facade, we're looking at keeping that primary facade as intact as possible without any kind of impact to that. Now, here on that east elevation with the divided light windows, if anything, it's bringing it back into code. It's adding the addition itself. And you're seeing that the old windows that are part of the primary facade, that new addition extending out, is not to code. Is that correct?
I'm seeing a couple things. I'm seeing, the distance of the window from the corners on both facades of the addition not being compliant with district standards.
And that would be the 30-inch rule from the corner in.
3-foot rule from the corner.
3-foot rule. And from my understanding that they are 3 feet in. After my site visit with the applicant.
I mean, it's narrower than the door, so the door is 3 feet. I don't understand how that would be 3 feet from the corner.
And I think we can make that adjustment with the applicant.
Okay.
Just to request that the window is divided light and that it is 3 feet from that corner.
Okay. I think that's something that staff should look into for sure. My contention about this too is, again, the concern here is, is about making rules work for families who live in the downtown and east side historic districts. I totally appreciate that. And I appreciate that the applicant, the architect, is working within the rules. And I'm questioning whether we have a good design outcome here as a consequence of designating, perhaps being overzealous in the designation, and for the retention of material for just the sake of doing it. We have a very ordinary looking addition here, and it may indeed be able to meet district standards. It may indeed be able to meet the corner rule, but it is design-wise, both in terms of how it attaches to the building and in terms of its features, pretty unremarkable. And so, if we have a process here that says, okay, well, I can go to staff and I could, meet these rules, I would like, and certainly for things to be more sensitively designed within those parameters as well, not just meet the letter of the law.
Madam Chair, Member Guido, that's great. That's greatly stated. As staff, our purview is the code. So as long as they meet that code and as we guide them, but I don't have the knowledge to guide an architect how to do his job, just like I'm an archaeologist, so unless that's my role, right? So it would be unfitting for staff to give telling the architect how to design their home. I believe that they did the best they could with what they had on that eastern primary facade. And I think it's great that they're proactive in it and they're looking at extending on this home and making the additions necessary for this home family to live in there comfortably. And I think it's even better to see a vernacular home staying vernacular. Like it's growing with the family and it's staying in this it's unique all unto its own.
I'm not disputing any of that, Paul, but I don't agree that staff doesn't give design advice, nor should they. I think it certainly is the case that staff does give design advice and design feedback to applicants. And that's really the issue that I'm raising here. Again, it's a small room addition to a house that I can't even see the reason for its contributing status. And maybe it can be made to conform with the rules. But as far as a good design outcome, not great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Guida. Other board members, any comments? Any further comments? No? Anyone in this audience wishing to comment on this particular project? No one else? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Stephanie Beninatto.
Okay, Stephanie. You have the floor?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm also not really impressed with the design option offered here. It really does obscure what is a primary facade. I don't really get that it's 6 inches off the primary facade unless you mean there's a 6-inch separation between the proposed bedroom and that primary facade. But it certainly obscures that detail of the house. So I'm just pointing that out because I think it's just kind of playing games and, kind of complying with the letter of the law. But then again, coming to something that doesn't actually preserve what's supposed to be preserved. I think not attaching is good because at least then, if it ever gets removed, that portion will be there untouched. And I would appreciate it if it was somewhat more in keeping with Santa Fe style in terms of a door instead of just a flat slab door. And certainly staff can determine whether something's 3 foot from a corner, which is kind of a basic objective design standard. And I would expect that staff would actually look at those, know those, and review plans for compliance with those. Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom?
Madam Chair, we don't have anyone else.
Thank you. Yes, you may certainly. We're having one of the
Let me
owners come
just
forward.
clarify
and-
something too.
Yes.
The windows are divided and they're called out as divided in our letter.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, sir, please come forward and get sworn in.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sam Gerberding, 1120 East Alameda Street.
Thank you.
So my comment is this, my request of you for consideration is, I certainly understand everything being said about the design and perhaps not being inspiring or anything that you think carries forward the longstanding beautiful tradition of Santa Fe. I'll be the first to agree with this. Practically speaking, as we've gone through this process, there have been more and more expenses involved, updating the facilities, electrical paneling system, and so forth. So our charge to the architect was to work within the rules that you have established for the historical board. And of course, within that, design something that it is easily created and most importantly, affordably created. So on our side, letting perfect get in the way of good, we simply want to have an extension of the space that allows our son to enjoy himself and have his own quarters and so forth. So I just ask that your consideration be given to that wonderful blend between practicality, form and function, and understanding that if there was not a monetary issue in the world, of course, we would be back again and again to develop the most beautiful edition we could possibly develop. But in this case, we ask that you realize we're working within the confines of what we're financially able to do within following the rules that you have established. I just wanted to ask you to consider that as you write this. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric, did you have anything further?
The windows will be 6 light and there'll be a panel door.
And Eric, the tall window that's on, is this the east facade?
The historic material on the east facade.
Yes, so that window per the plans is no longer a window. It has a wall behind that. Is
Right.
correct? Okay.
If there is nothing further, I will entertain a motion. Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Case number 2023-007490, HDRB 1120 East Alameda Street. I move that the application be approved as submitted, and that findings be entered that the exception criteria have been met for the reasons stated in the applicant's application and response to the exception criteria and the staff report.
Is there a second to this motion?
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion, with a friendly amendment, that the applicant update the drawings, to conform with district standards. I believe we should be consistent in our rulings, that the 3-foot rule of windows distance from the corner be reflected in the updated drawings, and that the applicant's verbal proposal that the new windows in the addition would be divided light windows also be updated for staff approval.
Madam Chair, I was, can we have a quick discussion before the
Yes,
motion moves
absolutely. Yeah.
forward? Member Guida, thank you for pointing out the fact that it's a wall behind that window. I wanted to ask the architect, I know that you were trying to avoid asking for a second exception of removing historic material, and that's why that kind of funny detail of that window remains in place. I'm just curious, would your preference have been if you could remove that window and have a more seamless connection to the existing structure? Would that have been your preference?
That's what I first drew.
That's what you first drew. And can staff advise, I know that that exception is not included in our packet tonight, but are we in a position that if we agreed with removing those windows and having the connection to the existing structure be as the applicant originally proposed, are we in a position that we could roll that into a motion tonight, or would it have to be postponed?
Yes, Member Aguilar Medrano, I would have to double check the code citation, but I believe that we would have to re-advertise because the exception is very specific to constructing the addition within 10 feet of a primary facade. And so removal of historic material has a different code section.
Okay.
So we would actually have to come back.
And I don't want to delay the applicant any further because I know that has cost implications and I'm sure you are wanting to get started. If there was a way that we could, Attorney Rubley is checking on this. If there was a way we could do that tonight, my personal preference would be to not have that weird detail of a window with a wall behind it and make an additional exception. But my understanding is that the applicant would prefer just to move forward with that if that's the option given tonight.
Attorney Rubley?
Well, the section about removing historic materials or alteration of historic features is found in, speaking in terms of 14-5.2 D1A. The exception that is being sought is to permit an addition within 10 feet of a primary facade, which is D2D. However, the removal of historic materials or alteration of architectural features applies only to spaces that embody the contributing status. So it is possible for the board to find that the removal of those historic materials are spaces that do not embody the contributing status. But I think that would be contrary to the fact that you found that to be a primary facade. So in this, under these circumstances, I agree with Heather that this would have to be re-advertised because it is an exception under a different subsection than what was advertised tonight.
Yes, never be shy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we certain that that window is historic material? Was it excluded from the primary facade designation, or do we know?
You would ask for information on when it was built and we couldn't provide the date. And so you supposed it was historic?
Do you have an
Opinion?
Yeah.
I think it was added, tacked on at some point. I don't know whether it was in the sixties or seventies, but we couldn't prove it to you that it was not younger than.
Eric, I think the owner would like to speak to that, and you can come forward.
I thought Gus was coming up.
If I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, but also in the alternative, the board can find that they are not historic materials. Again, I think that would probably be contrary to the designation of that facade as primary.
That was prior to 1970 because her aunt owned it from 1970 on, and it was there in 1970, so we couldn't prove that it was under 50 years old. But you had treated it as if it was historic material by making the primary facade designation.
Is it connected to the sunroom? Is it currently?
Yes.
Yeah, and do you know something about the sunroom? Is that also presumed to be?
That's the
70s.
same assembly.
The project, this is triggering in my mind. I don't know the exact address, but it's on East Palace where they've just preserved one wall of a building. It's a really funny detail. Like it stands out as strange. It's not doing anything in terms of preservation. And I know this isn't publicly visible, but I feel like this is going to be that same kind of strange detail at the end. And if the applicant's preference would be if we could walk away from tonight with an approval excluding that window, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a way that we can get there logistically.
That actually could be addressed that you could approve everything else and that portion could be addressed at a later date. If in fact, that's the route we're moving in.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
But I would agree that if the board through discussion could say with some certainty that, you know, this was not the intent of the facade designation, or upon further review, you know, this is not a contributing feature of the building, we could exclude it. We could make that ruling about the designation and make a motion that allows the project to move forward tonight. And I think that's a common sense suggestion for what's at hand and for the relative importance of this addition.
Further discussion a little bit, I'd keep the 6-inch offset anyway, so that we knew that the primary eastern facade, the length of it and the historical character of it, minus the one window.
And Eric, just to finish the thought, you know, if that window went away, the roof pop-up would go away too, right? You would just smooth out the roof.
Smooth out the roof.
If that window went away, the roof line.
Oh, yeah, I could get
would
the
be a
roof
single
line. I aligned the addition with the primary the primary sloped roof that was on it in the fascia, not with that little bump on it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Anthony.
Madam Chair, if I could be heard about
Okay.
one more time, I'm looking at the findings of fact and conclusions of law that the board approved with respect to the structure back in, I believe that was April of this year. With respect to the east, let's see, I guess that would be the north facade. Well, it doesn't state, but the board finds that the house, its construction, and its placement in a formerly agricultural zone exemplifies the vernacular nature of an agricultural structure. Its accretive changes from an agricultural structure to a residence are more than 50 years old and have acquired a historic significance. So the finding was that I believe that that sunroom, those windows are more than 50 years old and have acquired a historic significance, which I don't think you would express if you found it to be consistent with downtown and east side historic standards. But they have a historic significance in and of themselves. That's what the board found at that time. I don't know if that changes anything.
Yes, Member Beecher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out to the board members, in the Hickpie photo number 8 shows what we're talking about pretty well, and the sunroom, this window that we're discussing is clearly part of the sunroom addition, so it all has the same roof height. The windows are attached to the corner. I can't, we didn't designate this as primary, and if we had, we would have been, wrapped it around and included that window. So it can only, I mean, I voted no for contributing status in this case, but I don't imagine that the vote was intended to include this added on portion that is clearly not part of the original facade.
So with all this discussion taking place, it seems that that window could, that could be said, that portion is not historic. So we could go forward with a motion that would make that window more appropriate to the project.
Please do.
And Madam Chair, we'd have to have the current motion withdrawn.
So, who made that motion? Member Benvenu? Do we,
Well, I'm not clear that we've established that it's not historic. I thought we had established that it was, that it is historic. It may not be worth protecting, which is a different question, but I think the record tonight shows that it's at least 53 years old, if not older.
well,
So there's the rub. I mean, I'm fine with a solution that would allow that one window to be altered or to the extent it's historic material removed. But I don't, to me, this is an issue that just needs to be resolved legally as to what we can and can't do to accomplish that purpose. Tonight.
right, so I think the entire project could be approved if you're moving in that direction, and we can resolve the window issue, which seems to be a question, at another meeting.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that would satisfy the applicant's concerns.
I'd do it for nothing for my client.
So you're proposing that we approve it as submitted and that with the understanding that you can come back to us with a modification in the future if you so decide. Sure. And I don't even think we have to give you that permission, but it's good to have the understanding. Sure.
Okay, so,
But at least you're hearing from us as to what the likely outcome would be in the event that you made that decision.
so your motion stands?
Yes, I think
Your
so.
motion stands, and who was the seconder of that motion?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet. Oh, yes,
I-
we did. We seconded with a friendly.
Friendly amendment. I think, John, my only concern is, if we approve everything tonight as submitted even with the corrections, that's the ruling of the board. We are depending on the applicant to come back to resolve this jumble, which is an outcome of how the case has been handled to date. That doesn't sit well with me.
Right, but what is the alternative? Because
Well, I think,
the
and then
applicant
we-
otherwise would have to come back to get.
I think the alternative is either we find a way to approve the thing tonight with removal of historic material, if there's a way, or we say this case is postponed and comes back.
Okay. Well, I already said that if we could find a way to do it legally, we would do that. And I didn't get an answer that that was possible. So that brings us to option 2, which I don't think the applicant prefers to have. They prefer to have it approved tonight with the option to come back.
Sometimes you have to do what we have to do what we have to do.
They don't want to come back. It's just expensive.
Okay,
Oh, they want the window anyway. There you go. Okay.
okay.
So for what it's worth, I'll just say that I accept the friendly amendment as it was previously stated and would just add that to me, the motion, along with all motions we ever make for approval, implicit within that motion is that staff determines that all code requirements are met, that unless an exception is requested. So to me, it's implicit that the setback rules and the panes of glass size, all those other aspects of the project have to meet staff approval and be consistent with the code. But I don't mind it being explicitly stated as the proposed amendment set forth in this case.
And Mr. Guido made, you were the seconder of the motion.
Mhm.
Okay, is there anything further to add to this motion? If not, we'll have a roll call vote.
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo,
Yes.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes. Yes.
Member Beachside,
No.
Member Bienvenu,
Yes.
Member Guida.
No.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Chair Rios,
Yes.
this is, possibly he may come back for the other meeting if he chooses to come back, but this is, Eric's last meeting. He is retiring.
Bye, Eric. Good luck. Have
Best
fun with your
wishes to him.
next stage of your life.
Madam Chair, for purposes of clarification, Mr. Enfield.
Eric.
Mr. Enfield, please listen. All right. The motion is that the application be approved as submitted, findings be entered that exception criteria have been met for the reasons stated in the application. There was a friendly amendment before anybody voted that the applicant return with drawings showing compliance with the 3-foot rule, that would be reflected in updated drawings, and the applicant's proposal windows be divided light, and that those be updated for staff approval.
Correct.
All of you, let's see, 5 of you voted to approve, 2 of you voted to disapprove.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that your understanding, Mr. Enfield? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All righty, last case this evening is located at 723 Old Santa Fe Trail. That is Ramon's case.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is case 2023-07605-HDRB. 723 Old Santa Fe Trail. The applicant seeks a status review to inform future renovations. What you're looking at here is a view of the entrance court and a portion of the west and east elevations. This is a single-family home located in the downtown East Side Historic District and just east of Old Santa Fe Trail and north of the Old Pecos Trail divergence. The property is outlined here in red. The status is not resurveyed. The site plan. According to the Historic Code for Properties Inventory Form, this house is a small dwelling consisting of 2 to 3 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, bathroom, closet, and an attached shanty. It is L-shaped with recent additions attached to its west wall. Its primary materials are cement stucco walls, wood, and aluminum doors and windows. I should also note it's adobe. The old portion is adobe with very deep openings. The building is currently covered in a synthetic red paint. What you're looking at here on the left is the north elevation. On the right is the west elevation. The house dates, they weren't really able to nail down the date, but it's probably built in the 40s, so it's over 80 years old. In post 1978, a enclosure and reconstruction of the porch and an addition to a shanty. You don't really get a good image of the shanty from these photographs, I'm sorry, but it's wood frame slapped on addition. The south elevation is to the left, east elevation on the right. There are some 3/1 historic windows included in it would be the west and east elevations. This is from John Murphy's HCPI that was recently performed. Despite a portion of the building being 80 years old, the overall structure with its recent additions and alterations does not merit contributing status due to cumulative integrity loss. For this reason, the recommendation is to maintain non-contributing status to the downtown Eastside Historic Districts. He notes that the stone walls are interesting for their rough bulk construction, but do not raise the level of contributing status. For this reason, staff recommends the historic status of the structure as non-contributing for 14-5.2C designation of significant and contributing structures. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ramon. Ramon, what are the recent additions to this structure? Yeah, tell us what elevations.
Let's go a little bit back to the site plan. If you see that bump out to the left of the L-shaped plan, that's what John's calling the shanty, which is wood framed and in really pretty poor shape. I believe the addition that's to the south, the little bump out there was made to enlarge the kitchen area at some point. I don't have a date for that.
So it's a very small portion of this vernacular building. I tend to disagree with your recommendation. During the field trip today, this is a very simple building. It's a humble building. It's a reflection of what was built probably in those days. People probably didn't have a lot of money, and they were just trying to establish a home for their families. So they built with what they could afford. And this has, this is an L-shaped building, which is traditional. And it also has the brick window sills, which
Yes.
are also indicate a particular time period that other buildings in our historic districts have. And the building to me looked like rather very solid. I don't know what the inside looks like. Yeah. Does this have vigas?
There's a portion of the kitchen that has exposed vigas, yes. It's
And-
kind of a kooky one viga that's on west elevation that extrudes from the facade. And I believe that that portion of the building, it's above that white door to the right on the west elevation. I believe that there was a false ceiling put in at some date, and there's likely vigas under above that.
Yeah, people would put false ceilings to try to
Dress
help
it-
them with
dress it
their
up.
energy bills
Yeah.
and hide the beautiful vigas. Yeah, but those are my comments. I will continue to listen to whatever anybody else has to say, and maybe
I don't disagree with any of your comments that you made. And it was kind of a tough choice. But I felt that John Murphy's arguments were also valid in his statement, and I agree.
any questions or comments in reference to this particular project? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, yeah, a couple questions. The color, I assume, is of recent origin. Is that true?
Yes, it's a synthetic paint, Oaxacan red is I think what John Murphy called it, and I don't have a date for that, but it's in pretty good shape.
Does anyone know what's underneath? Has anyone checked?
I have
Looked?
not.
And if it were a contributing structure, what would be the primary facades in staff's view?
I would suggest the one that you're looking at on the north elevation with the deep recesses. And the east elevation. I don't have a good picture of it, but that also has a pretty nice composition to it with some historic windows. The entrance courtyard itself is just really funky with there's actually 3 front doors to it. So those would be my recommendations. the north elevation, that portion of the north elevation and the east elevation.
Can you show us the east elevation?
This is kind of an oblique angle, but you can see the composition of the facades with the three windows. There's a parapet height change there too. Part of the roof extends a little bit further out. That was obviously probably one of the additions that were made over time. And the parapet steps up as you go farther south.
Okay.
That east elevation photograph on the right, you can see the deep reveals of the adobe construction.
Yeah, I generally agree with the chair's comments, but also with, I understand the bit of a conundrum because the additions have certainly, the post-1978 addition has certainly impacted the structure. But the basic L shape was in place by at least 1958.
Correct.
And it's certainly characteristic of that. Even the similar buildings. Is the oldest part of this made of adobe?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Will the applicant please come forward?
Do you swear under the penalty of, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Christoph Eagleton, 723 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Thank you.
Comments? You asked me to come up here. Can I offer some of my comments or?
No, absolutely. You
Yeah.
have the floor.
Okay, well, I would just simply state that as a native New Mexican, Taos and Santa Fe, my only goal is to, or my immediate goal is to elevate it from what I would consider kind of poor condition to at least good or excellent condition as much as I can. There are definitely some funky elements throughout. You know, like as Ramon mentioned, the three entrances in the front courtyard area, my aim would be to improve that with potentially coyote fence and really elevate it to a status worthy of the neighborhood and surrounding structures and worthy of the historic, you know, Acequia Madre neighborhood. So that's my immediate goal. I can see a little bit into the original structure. There are no vigas in that area. I don't know if that's appropriate to state here and now, but you know, that's what I can see, but I'm happy to answer any questions in terms of what I know.
Board members, do you have questions for the applicant? Or comments? Nothing. Anyone in this audience wishing to come and comment? Please come forward.
I'm Cody Potter.
And you need to get
Hi.
sworn in.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Cody Potter, 727.5 Old Santa Fe Trail. I actually have more of a.
Thank you.
view. Just,
Sir, you'll have to speak right
Okay.
into that mic.
my question is for the owner of the property. My my living room windows overlook his towards the east, and I can actually see the mountain. My main concern is the height elevation, if he's going to increase that, because it would block my beautiful view, the only view I have.
The thing is, this evening, we're only discussing the historic status
Oh, okay.
of the building, nothing. We don't know what he's planning to do exactly in the future.
Okay.
But if I were you, I would, you know, as neighbors, maybe you can talk to each other.
Okay.
Would be the appropriate thing in my view. And also, you can come to whatever meeting will be in the future for any remodel purposes.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, my main concern is, we're losing homes like this in neighborhoods all around the city. I mean, these homes were built by local people that were financially not able to build what they're building now, like I did 50 years ago on Hillside. I think it should be considered historic to preserve the neighborhoods, to try and keep them as historic as we can. And those neighborhoods were historic and should be considered historic. And the homes, whether it's livable or not, the main structure itself, adobe and other vigas or whatever, in my opinion, should be considered historic and contributing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Anyone else wishing to comment on this particular project? Anyone on Zoom?
I would also add,
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Stephanie Beninatto.
Yes, Stephanie, she's on Zoom.
Stephanie Beninatto, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm hoping that you can, again, it's telling me I'm only going to have 4 seconds to comment here, but I'm hoping that you will find it to be contributing. I think that the chair's remarks should be taken into account. The shape itself is so typical. And I would think that the part where the entry is the L shape, that is, would be historic. And it doesn't really matter as long as, you know, the add-on, whether it began as Adobe and then went to CMU, it's still historic. And it seems to me that some of those openings facing into that courtyard are probably original openings. Again, we didn't really, you haven't really discussed that at all, which might help you decide what facades should be primary. So I hope that you will help preserve these buildings. I am also supportive of Mr. Herrera's remarks. Thank you.
Anyone else on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You have the floor.
I was just going to add to, you know, the previous gentleman's comments that I am absolutely interested in preserving any historic aspects that I can. My immediate concern is to the entrances, the porch, and that non-contributing status would allow me to proceed to, of those facades anyway, would allow me to update it in a more practical sense, because currently those steps and the porch, et cetera, the shanty are impractical and somewhat hazardous in my opinion. So I just want to reiterate that that's my interest, and not at all to take away from the integrity of the historic aspect of those facades or the L shape. And that's what I fell in love with about the place to begin with. So I only am interested in elevating that aspect.
Thank you for your comments. Board members, how do you want to proceed? Member Guida.
Just a comment, Madam Chair. You know, while I appreciate the interest in diving a little deeper past recommendations of staff and of John Murphy in particular, you know, we do have an extensive report here. The discussion tonight really hasn't about the potential contributing status of this building has not, in my view, been particularly rigorous. I've heard that it's old. It's old. But I haven't heard anything about the integrity of the building, the historic integrity. We kind of throw that word around, but like, you know, yeah, there's a brick windowsill. Yeah, there are old elements to the building, but you know, the qualities of the structure that convey its either original design, its historic qualities, its associations with the time and place, to me are kind of few and far between. And I think John Murphy's report really makes that pretty clear. And that, in fact, the integrity of the building, again, this is an old building and there are lots of old buildings in Santa Fe, the integrity has been diminished by neglect, by subsequent additions, by changes in windows and doors, by alterations to the building. To me, that's a very well-reasoned, well-researched, and well-made historic preservation assessment of this particular property. I don't believe that, you know, this is some slippery slope and there are, you know, old buildings being demolished by the boatload in the historic districts. This board and this staff see that that doesn't happen. My question really is if we're going to reconsider or make a motion contrary to staff's recommendation, especially contrary to an expert preservationist, well-researched, well-argued presentation and research report about the status of this building, I think that the argument that's made by this board should be more rigorous than it's old and it's been there a long time. You know, to me, the argument should be made based on the integrity of the historic aspects of the resource and their contribution to the downtown and east side historic district. That's what I think we're charged to do by the code or the preservation portion of the code. And I think that would set a standard and a reasonable standard for having these discussions. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Guida, anybody else? If there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion. Member Beachside.
I'll make a motion. Thank you, Madam Chair. In case number 2023-007605 HDRB at 723 Old Santa Fe Trail, I move to approve the application as submitted and consistent with staff recommendation to designate the house as non-contributing.
Guido will second.
Anything further to add, board members? Nothing further. Roll call vote, please.
Member Baldo,
No.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
No.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenu,
No.
Member Guida,
Yes.
Member Mather.
No.
Okay, let's see, 1, 2. The motion has failed.
I will entertain a new motion. Bienvenue.
See no other hands raised. I will go ahead and try. Case 2022-007605 HDRB at 723 Old Santa Fe Trail. I move that based on the record as presented tonight and on a finding that this particular building is more than 50 years or older in its primary structure and helps to establish and maintain the character of the historic district. And though it's had minor alterations, the historic integrity remains, and therefore it be designated as contributing with the primary facades, the north and east elevations or facades.
Is there a second to this motion?
I'm Member Baldo. Second motion.
Chair,
Anything further to add? Yes, Member Aguilar Madron.
maybe
Oh.
a discussion item, more of
If
a
you do so, I just wanted to add to my motion that the color is not part of the contributing step. It's non-historical. Sorry, go ahead.
More so a question for you, Member Bienvenue, the stone wall on the south portion of the property, and I think the south portion looks like it's in good condition. There are some other photos where it's falling apart. Were you on the site visit today? Unfortunately, I wasn't.
Didn't mention the wall.
Okay, so you want to keep that excluded?
I didn't include it, right?
Okay.
You want to consider that we could, but I did not see anything in the record to justify that.
I believe I seconded, and that still stands.
Okay, Member Beechey?
Just by way of discussion, just, I'm not sure why we don't have facade drawings in this packet. I think that would be helpful for designating primary facades. But looking at the HICP report, the discussion of the north and west elevations mentions that there are there's a non-historic window, there's a modern metal door, the windows that are possibly historic, it doesn't designate them as such, but they are in poor condition. So there's also a step that seems to be dated 1976. So there's some things that probably should be accepted from the designation.
I think that you're probably right. You wanted to refer to them.
I mean, I don't know that I know for sure, but I'm just reading the HICP report, and I'm of the opinion that there's probably a little too much going on here, that it's not in great condition, that it should be preserved. And then the east.
Well, okay.
Yeah, that's the
Didn't mean to
north, and then the east has aluminum sash flanking an older wood casement. There's some problems with the windows on that side as well, I think. They don't have brick sills, so I think maybe that there's some indication that those may not have matched the original that on the other side. And I have some questions about how much of this is actually historic. Certainly the massing, yeah.
I have a comment about the stone wall. It it faces the south side of my property and the neighboring property, so it is on 3 different properties there on the south side of Christoph's property, Mary and myself.
And the stone wall was not part of this application, I believe, correct, Ramon? But I believe that walls, when you have a building that you are evaluating, I believe that the wall should also come into play.
Madam Chair, I took a close look at that wall and considered it. What I felt was not really contributing were the actual construction technique, which includes 10 pieces of 10 tile, bricks, river stone. It looks like it was rather haphazardly constructed.
So you did give it some consideration?
I did.
Whether it should be included.
I did, and I also considered John's evaluation of that wall also, the HICP evaluation.
Thank you, Ramon.
So I would still ask Ramon to address the issues of facades. It was staff's recommendation that if the property were considered contributing, that the north and east would be primary. So can you address the specific issues of what parts of those facades are potentially non-historic and to be excluded from that designation?
On the north, I would exclude the window that's clearly non-historic. And I would exclude the non-historic windows on the east facade. I believe that there's 3 of them. One of them's covered up with window addition, but you can still see the wood 3/1 behind it.
I think maybe we do need to pull up something showing us the facade, a facade diagram. I know you haven't specifically identified them by number, but what can you pull up so that we know what we're all referring to? And I would also ask you to address the west facade of just the west, I guess, the northwest portion of the west facade.
Okay, you can see the L footprint clearly defined by 1958, and in how it was, it grew into that prior to 1958, I don't really have a good idea on. The, John didn't say this, I don't think, in his report specifically, but I believe that that corner door was the white door, was the original door. And the door to your left was added at a later date. And then the door that you see on the north elevation in the background was added sometime later. That's probably not even a historic opening.
So looking at that west facade, other than the window that you identified, is the facade intact from what it was originally?
I believe that the door on the left was added at a later date and the white door was original.
I meant the door, I'm sorry, not the window. So the door opening itself?
Yes, it's got a 1958 date on the threshold.
Okay.
And that window, the center of that elevation is, in my opinion, clearly historic 3/1 panel. And the brick facade, as Cecilia mentioned, both of those windows that you see in that photograph have the brick seals, which kind of tells me that those were original to the building, although the one on the right, it looks like that window has been replaced at a date unknown. It might be historic, but it's of a different vintage. That helps.
Why did you recommend the east facade over this western facade?
Because it has its historical integrity more intact. I think that the composition of these openings on the east west elevation and the portion of the L shape on the north elevation have been modified to the extent that it loses some of its historical integrity.
This is the difficulty of
So Member
facades
Benvenu?
when we don't have a full recommendation ahead of time from staff as to what they're going to be.
We had a recommendation that was
Oh, that-
non-contributing.
Right, but that was the recommendation.
Sorry,
but now
two
that we're talking
recommendations.
about Contributing, we don't have a recommendation as to what the primary facades are. Oh,
So are you withdrawing your motion?
No,
What are you going to do?
no, I will continue to abide by staff's original proposal that if it were contributing, that the primary facades be the north and east, excluding the non-historic materials.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Anything? We'll take a roll call
Sorry,
vote.
There's
Madam Chair,
further
just-
discussion.
just one last comment, like, I mean, I think this house is really interesting and I'm really happy to see it's in the hands of someone who clearly cares about it and it values those things that are unique about it and are probably original in some cases. Looking at the facades, I just don't see like what on the north, what on the east that we're really interested in preserving. It seems more in the details, maybe a lot on the interior. There's some cool ceilings and posts and windowsills, and there's certainly the layout, the L shape is really is is a, worthy of preservation, that the additions on to the L are not. I just don't know what we're pointing to on each of these facades that's really the characteristic that we're looking to as inspiration for any sort of additions or replications or preservation. Just a comment.
Should I respond? Yeah, I think it's difficult because what we're preserving in my mind, making the motion, is the structure, its historical, as its integrity as a whole, meaning its general shape, its form, and its solidity, the window placement, the reveals, the handmade character, the construction materials. That's what, in my mind, we're preserving. This is an example of a type of construction and a style of home that is characteristic of that particular time and that particular historic district and that neighborhood. The primary facade designation is a question, and that's why, you know, myself, I'm having difficulty deciding which is the primary facade, because what my intention is to protect the entire structure. Again, as we discussed earlier, not to mean that it certainly needs to be made habitable. In any case that it's not, we never want to prevent that. And we also want to be able to allow people to continue to live in these homes, which means the ability to make changes, ongoing changes, as long as we preserve the general integrity of its contributing status, which is what we're trying to preserve. So that's the philosophical conundrum, is that I'm more interested in preserving the contributing nature of the structure. I'm having a bit of difficulty deciding which of these is the primary facade. In my mind, and this is, I disagree, I mean, I differ from staff, but staff's view is that primary means the facade that is most character defining. My mind, primary also indicates something that is visited, not that, at least partially visible to the public, because facade is another word for face. Face means the part that is directed towards the outside as opposed to the back, for example, which may have character defining features, but it's not presenting those features as it's the structure's face to the public. To me, the primary facades would more likely be the ones that you're looking at in this courtyard area, because that's what you see, and also the north facade, whereas the east facade is much more hidden. So but I also want to respect staff's point of view on primary facade designation. So I don't know where that got us, but that's my explanation of why I'm in a bit of a quandary myself. Go ahead. I'm not.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, Member Guido.
John, maybe if I don't agree with you fully, maybe just to kind of help this conceptually, I think, you point to, my frustration is the lack of definition of terms, like it's, historic integrity, contributing or being thrown around without a lot of specificity. And I think that, what you're just saying hints at a way to get there, right? It is, to me, it is through an articulation of the character defining features by saying, the elements that make this building contributing to the district and have an aspect of historic integrity should be constructed from a rationale of character defining features. Those could be the L-shaped form, the one-room depth of the building, the overall existing massing, the deep set and unaligned window openings, and then of course exclude the non-character defining elements and capture in that such an argument the facades that would protect the character defining elements. So, if staff says the east facade, but that doesn't in any way protect the L, then I would exclude that and say, I'm interested in the courtyard facades. I think that's a way of making a well-reasoned status designation. Not that you're unreasonable. I'm just saying, that we
I
have
agree with-
to hang it on
We're
something.
not in disagreement.
We have to hang it on something other than, to the applicant, how much did you pay for the Higby report? What does this cost?
$1,000.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we just pulled down a grant to help people in the historic districts who find this difficult and challenging and expensive. There has to be a reason why we do these historic inventory reports, why we hire professionals. I'm not saying that John Murphy should be the sole arbiter of what's historic and what's contributing and what's not in the district. And I'm not saying that this board doesn't have any role or the public doesn't have any role in designating things, but there has to be some common terms here. And I think this is what I'm getting at. If we're going to make a designation, let's do it based on criteria, not emotion.
Yeah, I'd just respond to that by saying I'm in complete agreement with most everything that you just articulated. And that is what I meant when I said that is what, and I thought I articulated what the aspects of this building are that make it contributing in my mind, not just that it's old. We've definitely designated old buildings as non-contributing, either because they don't meet any of our standards or because they're not characteristic, or they're just completely uninteresting. But I think I've tried to articulate, and I think there's general agreement amongst part of the board that the aspects of this building that that are contributing to the character are the fact that it's a owner-built, handmade house that is the volumes are of an adobe structure. It is low slung. It has accretive, obvious accretion in the way that it's been developed over time, which also speaks to the vernacular style of an owner-built house as the family expands. It's got deep reveals. It's got rounded corners. It speaks of the material from which it was made. It has irregular windows and door placements, which also speak to the handmade quality of it and highly characteristic of that style of owner-built housing in the neighborhood and all of the east side. And those are the characteristics that in my mind we're trying to protect. And I think that the applicant has indicated what is valued by the owner as well, and that contributes to the character of the district. So that part, I think we're in complete agreement on, even if you don't agree that they contribute, that is I agree completely that we have to have characteristics that actually make it contribute to the character of the district. And those are what they are in my mind. Getting back to the primary facades is still a bit of a difficult question to me. I guess having elaborated on this discussion, I'm personally more inclined to think that the western portion of the courtyard is primary and the north portion of that same part of the structure, just because I think that visually they give the strongest indication of all the characteristics that I've just described.
Or are you indicating that the north and the west, you would indicate those would be the primary?
So I actually would modify the motion to make those the two primary facades.
And actually, I believe that you stated that very clearly, and that Member Guida actually was, even though he doesn't agree with the overall designation, that he was agreeing with what you were saying, what you expounded on. I believe that you both were saying the same thing. That's what I'm hearing. And in the future, if this goes through as historic, I would say perhaps that if the applicant or staff finds that they have explicit evidence that something is not historic to the house, they can indicate that to us in the future if they come forward with with remodeling plans, which probably will take place. And that could be indicated in the future, and you would take it, the board would take it under consideration.
And if I could add to that, I would personally find it helpful if the staff recommendation is to be non-contributing, that there still be, that you still address, but if the board decides it is contributing, then staff's recommendation would be, and then a primary facade designation. And the reasons given for that. Because I know you've said this is a close call. They're almost always close calls. And so I think that you would know, if you had gone the other way on that close call, you would have been able to designate or recommend primary facades, and I would find that very helpful.
So for clarification purposes, Member Benvenu, would you restate your motion?
Thank you.
Heather?
Thank you, Chair Rios. Chair Rios, member, so you mentioned a character defining feature as being sort of the courtyard, in a way. And so I'm just wondering, and you might restate your motion and solve this anyway, but on the north elevation and the west elevation, would the courtyard also include that historic portion of the north elevation within the L? That's just one question that I have.
Sure. Okay, so I agree with that, actually, because that is what, in my mind, we're trying to protect here. Again, subject to the possibility of exceptions being granted. All right, let's see what we've got. So in case 2022-007605 HDRB 723 Old Santa Fe Trail, for all the reasons articulated, I move that the structure be designated contributing and the north facade be designated as primary, the west facade on the north side of the building be designated as primary, and the north portion of the northern, let me think, the north portion of the foot of the L that is historic only be designated as primary, and I hope that's clear enough. It's difficult without numbered primary or facade drawings.
Do you feel that's clear enough, Heather?
Yes, Chair Rios.
Thank you. do
And
I-
also excluding any materials that staff determines are non-historic in those primary facades.
And do I hear a second?
Neither seconds.
Second. He had seconded before, and do you mind if she seconds?
No, go right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, member. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
No.
Member Bienvenue,
Yes.
Member Guida,
No?
Member Mather,
Yes.
Member Valdo.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. And I do want to say to the applicant, sometimes this, as noted this evening, the discussion on cases such as this one can be difficult, but I believe that this board is a very thorough board. We don't take anything for granted, really, and we do hope to work with you in the future. Okay? Anything under discussion items?
Rios, no.
And matters from the board. Anything, Member Guida?
Just a few, Madam Chair. A question for Heather. Do I understand that the text amendment is before City Council tomorrow night for
Yes.
final vote?
Chair Rios, Member Guida, yes, it is going to the final vote for the city council tomorrow, and I forgot to mention that. My apologies. And it has been reviewed by both the Quality of Life Committee as well as by the Public Works Committee. And they all recommended it as as proposed originally. So, but it is in the record what the H board requested.
So the board's comments are not, are recorded but not incorporated in the proposal.
That is correct. The sponsor of the bill, Councilor Lindell, felt like it would just be fine to go as original.
And is there public comment tomorrow night, or is it just a vote?
I believe there will be public comments.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. The second thing was just a kind of point to make about, what just happened here. We had a case that we weren't able to rule on tonight because our designation perhaps was not specific enough in how it was made. So, the designation of that structure, which resulted in this kind of funny window detail and us not having a way out, is a direct consequence of our historic determination and our articulation of what the character defining features are on particular facades, not being specific enough. So in my mind, we can never be too specific and too rigorous in making these determinations. I think it's important for the owner of the property. I think it's important for the process and how troublesome and expensive it already is, and to not cause those unintended consequences. And I think it was a lesson to me in particular, this is a good reason why we need to be so specific on all of that. And then I guess last point I'll make, Paul articulated that staff is not responsible for design feedback. I certainly would agree insofar as architect applicants, we can consider many times to be experts in design and all of that. And certainly they have a responsibility and professional expertise in interpreting code and getting to the point. And it's their responsibility to design something of quality, visual quality, of aesthetic quality, of contextual quality, right? All of those things. And I would agree with that. But the way that staff interprets, handles cases, and makes recommendations, we've seen this before. There was a staff member here previously who was very famous for recommending to applicants to not attach a pergola to a primary facade by leaving a small half-inch airspace. And while that technically met the rules, it didn't produce good design outcomes. We saw some very funny looking pergolas that were supported outside the building that didn't look like the type of architecture that we are intending to produce here. And so this is said with full appreciation that we are asking planning staff to have expertise in historic preservation, in technical drawing, in design, in planning, in zoning, like all of these things. And so I'm not envious of your position and the amount of expertise that it takes, but I do think that planner case managers are responsible for providing some design feedback to applicants. And so that was a case where, we saw something that didn't look right. And, and I think that, those of us on the board and hopefully staff can also say, this smells funny. This is a really unfortunate outcome of following the rules. And I think those are good things to flag. And I know that in the past that it has happened with applicants, and maybe this applicant just wanted to get through tonight, but I don't want to look at stuff at this board that, is maybe correct per the letter of the law, but is really unfortunate looking and doesn't line up with the intent of having a designed historic district.
Madam Chair, Member Guida, totally agree. And my review on that application should have been better, especially on the primary facade, the historic glass, and then the extension. I could do better on that. And I'm learning my role. And these cases, every case is so different. No one case is the same. So you got to pay attention to those. And I agree, the 6 inches and at the end state is, how do you let this family grow into that home? It's a vernacular style home. It's unique already in its character. So how do we allow that process to take place? So I totally understand. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Paul. That's all I have.
Thank you for your
Or that was
comments, Member Guida. They are appreciated and. Yes, of course.
Madam Chair,
Member
thank you.
Benvenu.
Yeah, I think all those are good points as well, although I just, especially the idea that, you know, I think the primary facade designation came up twice today. That was one. And the discussion we just had, I think that that's just an extremely difficult and not very clearly defined aspect of our code. And I find we always have trouble with that, finding the right balance, because we really have very little to go on in terms of definitional guidance in that area. And it does have very severe impacts on the property owner. So, you know, I think all of those discussions, you know, were helpful to me to sort through some of that as well, although it just kind of reminds me of how difficult those decisions are until we get a rewrite of the code. But I would say in that one case, it's the major burden on all of these cases is really on the applicant in my mind. I mean, they're the property owner. Staff is not designing buildings for people. Staff, it's not their job to tell them how they should approach us either. They had every right and ability to ask for an exception to remove that window if that's what they want. They didn't. And maybe they're saying now we would have liked to, but we don't know that that's the case. They could have easily asked for it. We willingly granted the exception. I think we willingly would have granted the exception on the removal of historic materials as well. So I put the burden on the applicant for that, not on staff, unless we were told that staff specifically said, don't ask for that. In the absence of that, I think we've, you know, really both and I also agree that the design decisions are ultimately the responsibility of the applicant. As I've said before, we're not the good design review board. You know, we're here to as a quasi judicial body to enforce the ordinance. And it would be improper for us to tell people they couldn't do things for purely aesthetic reasons if they were otherwise permitted under the code. So that's just that. But I also wanted to say thank you very much for the administrative approval document. That's extremely helpful. I really like having that, and it's a great resource to have going forward. And I'd also like to thank staff and our stenographer, and I think the city clerk for the minutes, because I really like the way we're doing them, the way they came to us this time. I thought there was just the right amount of detail plus references to where to find the exact verbatim transcript in YouTube. So that to me is, again, the best of all worlds, and I appreciate your taking our concerns into consideration. That's all I have. Thank you.
For those profound comments. Yeah, I agree with what you had to say. And I just want to thank this board because we are a thorough board. We are not a rubber stamp board. We really look at each case very carefully and offer our comments. Each person on the board has a mind of their own, and they express those feelings. Some maybe more than others, but yeah, that's important. It's important for the city. Direction that this board takes gives a big impact to our very city. I was just in Austin visiting my daughter, and I come back to Santa Fe, and I was gone for a month, right? And I'm telling you, and I've lived here all my life, and I really do appreciate our architecture, and we really do have to preserve this board, our architecture within our historic districts. And so I'm glad that this board exists for that very reason. We have a very special place in this very city. You drive around and no wonder people love it. No wonder people come here. That's why I live here. Why do you live here? You're really right. I think we do. We have a really special place, and I'm glad that all of you take your positions very seriously, whether we're opposing one another or we are not. We're in unison, but and for me, it's important to hear all the voices, because I may have, and maybe many of you may come in, you may read a case, and you may have a specific way of thinking in a particular case, and then you hear everyone else's. And you may very well change your mind. So you're all appreciated. Thanks. Yeah, as well as this board. And are we going to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did.
Aye.